Tehuti and Seshat, deities of divine wisdom. On this first day of our 7-day Obradwira Nananomsom Akan New Year, Odwirafo examines the nature and function of Tehuti and Seshat based upon his book and how they manifest in the lives of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Black people. Live tonight, Sunday, September 17th, 8 p.m. Eastern. So our Obradwira 7-day New Year observance. So I'm just going to scroll down real quick. We did a 7-part series on this last year, and all 7 parts, as you can see on this page, on the Apo page. You see these 7 videos right here. Okay, so for Akan people, we're an Akan organization that is my ethnicity and a number of Black people in North America rediscovered their ancestral clans and so forth. Of course, the Yoruba tradition is very popular amongst, within our population. There was a large population of people who were enslaved in North America, but a very large percentage of the Akan people from Ghana and Ivory Coast were enslaved in North America. Some of us are spiritually Akan. That means some of us who were enslaved and fought wars of enslavement and so forth, fought against our enemies, massacred our enemies and so forth, established independent sovereign nations. Some of us were Akan ancestresses and ancestors. We transitioned here. We watched our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-great-grandchildren growing up over the course of the next century, 2 centuries. And then when it was time for us to reincarnate through Bebra, reincarnation, which the Akan term is Bebra, to come back again and so forth. When our spirits were drawn into the womb of one of our descendants, one of our great-great-great-great-great-granddaughters and so forth, this ancient Akan ancestor or ancestress yourself was born back into the world. And even though there was some blood mixture, we're the same spirit that is returned. And we're going to, of course, get into that. Wo tumi fra mboja nanso wo tumi mfra okra. You can mix blood, but you cannot mix the soul. So many of us have found out our, rediscovered or remembered and so forth, our ancestral spirit genetic identity. This is why we're in our Akan organization. And other people, some of you will be Igbo. You'll find your Igbo. Some people are Basa. Some people are Fula. Some people are Fang. Some people are Ovambo. Some people are Yoruba. Some people are Ibibio. Different groups, whatever your group is, you'll be drawn to that specific culture. There are means by which you can find out what your ancestral culture is, spirit genetically. You as a spirit reincarnating through your blood circle to return into the world once again. The place that you once lived on the continent, the last time you were living on the continent, the specific region, the specific village and so forth, the language you spoke, those things are within you. So when you're naturally drawn to individuals or information about that particular group, you're going to be drawn to it in a very poignant way because that is the group that you come from, that you lived as a part of, and you are still part of that identity. That is your identity. So on our page, we're talking about our 7-day New Year observance. In Ghana, parts of Ivory Coast, there are about 45% of the population of Ghana is Akan, about 42% in Ivory Coast, in the neighboring country, Ivory Coast of Cote d'Ivoire, is Akan. About 26 million Akan people total. But the traditional New Year happens around August, September, October, around that particular time. It shifts from year to year, but it's around that particular time. It's a 7-day observance in most places. Some places they have it a little bit longer, but typically it's a 7-day observance. For us, when we reestablish our New Year observance, we do it in September, and we always calibrate it to the Atemet equinox, the so-called autumn equinox, named after the deity Atem and Atemet, the male and female divinity Atem and Atemet and so forth. But that is the evening point of the year. It's akin to a conception. So when you think about sunrise, the sun is breaking through the surface, of the horizon. That's like a growth, that's like sprouting like flowers breaking through the surface of the soil and sprouting. When the sun reaches its, and that's also akin to, the spring equinox, the evening point, 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. When the sun gets to its highest point in the sky, that is noon and so forth, this is the hottest energy, most fiery energy. That's akin to the summer solstice around June 21st, June 22nd. And that is the longest day of the year, about 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness, the most, fiery part of the year and so forth. That's akin to noon. When the sun sets in the west, that's an evening point. It's crossing. So it's the evening point, a balancing point. One balancing point was the sunrise. The other balancing point is the sunset. That is akin to the sun going into the ground, is akin to a seed being planted in the soil. That is also akin to the autumn equinox. 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness. And then when the sun goes into the quote unquote underworld during the 12 hours of the night, and you get to midnight, the deepest, darkest point of the 24-hour cycle, time for regeneration and rooting and grounding and so forth. That is akin to the winter solstice, the deepest and darkest time of the year, 15 hours of sunlight, 9 hours of darkness. This is the germination, rooting point where the roots go deep down into the soil and so forth, deep down into the blackness, the darkness, retrieving the nutrients in the water and so forth. And then eventually at spring, these roots will shoot up and break through the surface of the soil, and the cycle continues to go. But when the sun sets in the west, that is akin to a seed being planted in the ground. That's also the harvest time. So when you have the Ojira celebration in Ghana, Ojira means purification, but that's also the quote unquote Yam festival, the Borode festival, the Yam festival. It is the harvest time. So just when like the sun is setting, that's akin to the full flowering around noon, full flower, fire, energy, hot energy, vigorous activity, and so forth. That's the full flowering. And then when the fall comes, when the sun sets, that's akin to the fruits falling off the tree and you gather them and you collect them. That's the harvest time. But then when you harvest the fruits of your labor and consume and so forth, you also take the seeds out and you plant so you can restart that cycle again. When you plant seeds in the soil, that's akin to a burial. You're planting the seed, you're covering it over with, soil, you're pouring water, just like we, bury the deceased and cover them over with soil and pour libation and so forth. But that ritual process is the precursor to the resurrection that's going to happen in the spring. So when you plant the seed, that is a conception. When the sun sets in the west and goes into the quote unquote underworld, that's a conception. So the autumn equinox is the harvest time, but it's also the seeding time, it's a conception. And this is why this is our new year. This is the time for the new year. We have a 7-day New Year observance. The New Year's Day is always the first full day of the Atemet equinox, the evening or balancing point of the year. September 23rd this year is the first full day of the autumn equinox. Sometimes it's the 22nd, sometimes it's the 23rd. Since this year is the 23rd, then our 7-day observance is from September 17th through the 23rd. And the 7th day is New Year's Day. And we say Obradwira Pa, which means good Obradwira or life purification, or Afe Shia Pa, which means good coming together of the year. That means Happy New Year and so forth. So, and when it's on the 22nd, like some years it will fall on the 22nd. So that means our observance will be from September 16th through the 22nd. This year, September 17th through the 23rd. So today, of course, is the first day of our observance. Now, so as we said, when you scroll down on the Apo page, and I can put that link in the chat room, we're not going to go over the entire 7-day cycle like we did last year in the context of going through each single proverb, but we have these 7 videos like we showed before at the bottom of the page, and you will see day 1 all the way through day 7. Now, so you can go through those in every day of the week. There's an ebe or proverb associated with each day. There's ritual practices associated with each day, and we go into detail about that. Excuse me. In each one of those videos. So we did 7 days of Obradwira last year, but because it last year began on Miminada or Saturday, and then the 7th day was Friday. This year, we're starting on Sunday, Awusida, and the final day will be Miminada or Saturday. So since last year, it began on Saturday. Saturday was day number 1 last year. Sunday was day number 2. So when you look at this, this is day 1, that was last year was Saturday. Day 2 was Sunday last year. So if you're going to look at today's proverb, ebe, look at today's information, the cosmological information associated with Sunday, you're going to look at day 2, that was Sunday. Day 3 will be day 2 for this year. So you would start with day 2. That was Sunday. This was Monday. This was Tuesday, and so forth. And day 1 last year was Saturday. Well, this year, Saturday is day 7. So we don't have the proverbs like the first day is, one proverb, and the second day is based on the day of the week and the divinity that governs the day of the week. So Sunday is governed by the divinity Awusi on the masculine side and Esi on the feminine side. So there's proverbial wisdom, cosmological information associated with the divinity that governs the day, and so forth. So when you're looking at each day of the week, you want to start off with the day that you're actually on. It's not just based on number, it's based on the divinity that governs the day. So when you're listening to day 2, you're going to see that we're going to say today is Sunday and so forth, and you're on the right track. Oh, give me 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So that's just a little bit of background. And we also want to show this. When we're talking about the deities of the 7 days of the week, when you go to our Akradin Bosom page on our website, you'll see that we're talking about in the Akan tradition, you hear people named Kwesi and Kwame, and Akosua and Ama or Ami and Yao and Kofi and Afu and so forth. And they say we're named after the days of the week. We're actually named after the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that regulate the 7-day week. So we wrote a couple of books and a number of articles on each one of these divinities, the male and female deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. And we're named after these different divinities. You're born on a certain day because that is an indication to the community about what deity was assigned to your spiritual head. And that's why you came into the world, to carry that energy from that deity into the human sphere, into your community, to bring that energy complex into the community. So we're named after the divinity that governs that day. And because of that, the divinity makes sure that we're born on their day to let the community know that we were assigned to them pre-incarnation. So we put together this chart showing their images in ancient Kamit, as well as the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies and so forth, as well as the major body systems that these 11 male and female divinities govern. So when you look on our Akradin Bosom page, you'll see that information. So that's just an aside, just so when you hear people talking about, day names or soul names and so forth, the days of the week associated with specific energetic complexes that govern these different days. Now, what we want to do is get into the topic for tonight, And before we get into that part, let me just okay, so we want to talk about Tehuti and Seshat, the male and female divinity of divine wisdom, and how they manifest in our lives. But first, one of the 31 books that we published, and you can download all 31 of our books for free, is Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Karakasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. Now, in this particular book, we're showing the etymological origin and cosmological origin of the term Ankh, which is Ankh becomes Yonk and Yoke and Yoka, and we show how that happened in European languages and so forth. But we also talk about the term Karakara, which became chakra in Sanskrit. That term Karakara, anything round, stick, staff, cylinder, and roll and so forth, that became Karakara or Kakara or chakra and so forth. It's also the term for shrine. And then we get into some detail about the 7 deities governing the 7 parts of the spirit body and so forth, the spiritual anatomy. And let's just show that real quick. So you'll see the different nerve ganglia, the bunches of nerves and so forth, akin to the 7 regions that are typically called the 7 chakras in the 7 chakra system. And these bunches of nerves, these nerve ganglia, collectively, physiologically, are the centers of energy or the shrines. These knots of nerves, these 7 knots and so forth, what we show in the book with regard to the spiritual anatomy, that these 7 knots were fully incorporated in ritual in ancient Kamit thousands of years before the fallacy of Hinduism. Now, one textual reference that we put forward, you see it says here, chapter 71 from the Pert Imheru, or the Rudu Pert Imheru, so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day. And what they're saying is, O you 7 knots, arms of the balance on that night of setting the sacred eye in order, who cut off heads, who sever necks, who take away hearts, who make a slaughter in the island of fire. I know you, I know your names. May you know me just as I know your names. If I reach you, may you reach me. If you live through me, may I live through you. May you make to flourish what is in your hands, the staff or the spine, which is in your grasp. May you destine me to life annually. May you grant to me many years of life over and above the years of my years of life, many days over and above my days of life, many nights over and above my nights of life, until I depart. May I rise to be a likeness of myself. May my breath be at my nose. May my eyes see in the company with those who are in the horizon on the day of dooming the robber. So they're talking about the 7 knots, and there are 7 deities that govern those 7 knots. They talked about the spine being grasped. Hold on a second. Let me make sure. Okay, so when you see this term post-jat, you see it's spelled with the reared serpent, the symbol of the backbone, which is this symbol here. But you also have a spelling with the reared serpent and the circle with the dot in the middle, which is the symbol for the solar disk and so forth. So you have a reared serpent, not a serpent on its stomach, but a raised up or reared serpent, the symbol of the backbone, and the solar disk. Now, of course, when they talk about Kundalini being at the base of the spine and rising up the backbone and so forth, and that's that solar energy rising up the spine in the form of a sacred snake and so forth, that's fully incorporated in ritual in ancient Kemet thousands of years before so-called Hinduism. And we see that in the text. Now, if we want to look at This is the Mer text of Unas, the Per-A, so-called Pharaoh Unas, the pyramid text, are the oldest religious text compositions in existence. And what does Unas say in that text? So this is thousands of years before Hinduism. It says Unas is the Nile snake, the leading bull who has swallowed his 7 aratu, 7 uraid cobras. And so his 7 neck vertebrae came into being, who give orders to his 7 posjatu, Enneads, to hear the words of the king. So they're talking about the king, Unas, becoming like the sacred Nile snake who swallowed 7 cobras, and they became his 7 cervical vertebrae. These 7 radiant forces, divinities, became his 7 cervical vertebrae, and they give, orders to the specific divinities that govern his entire spiritual anatomy. So once again, we're showing that because when we're talking about spiritual anatomy and the different divisions of the spirit and so forth, and this aspect of 7 different divisions, that comes from our ancient cosmology. Now, when we talk about Tehuti and Seshat, and before we get to that point, just to make one quick reference. So you see here the 7 Chasu, 7 divine masters of wisdom who helped Tehuti to plan the universe. Their names were Neferhat, Neferpehui, Nebdesheru, Ka, Bak, Kek, and Sai. And they can be found in different texts, including one of a more recently translated text from the Edfu temple and so forth. And that's one of the temples that we visit when we go to Kamit. And we will be going back to Kamit in June if you would like to come with us on that trip to Kamit and Kanit, Egypt and Nubia. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. But these 7 Chasu are 7 deities that govern the OU 7 knots of Met Ort. The 7 knots, the 7 nerve ganglia, those are the physical shrines of these 7 Chasu, or these 7 divinities that govern your spiritual anatomy. And they talked about, they assisted Tehuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, with ordering the universe. Ra and Ra'ed direct Tehuti and Seshat to order the universe, and they have assistants, and these assistants sometimes take the form of 7 baboons and so forth, but these are 7 divinities that regulate order within the universe. In your body, they govern these 7 shrines in your body. The 7 nerve ganglia are the physical seats of these spiritual shrines and so forth. These kara, misnomer kakra or chakra and so forth. All of this comes from Kamit, and you see it's fully integrated in ritual thousands of years before Hinduism. Now, so since we're talking about the spiritual anatomy, let's look at that. And we want to look at the place where Tehuti and Seshat exist within your spiritual anatomy. Okay, hold on a second. Okay. Okay, so we wrote an article called Hunam Su. And what we were doing in this article, similar to what we did in the Sankofa book, dealing with Tehuti and Seshat, is we're showing the spiritual anatomy in ancient Kamit and the exact same terms in the Akan language with the same meanings. Now, so you're probably familiar with the terms. Some of these terms, like the Ba, which is the spirit, the Ka, which is the soul, the Aku, the Ab, the Hat, Sahu, Kahaibet, and Sa. Now, these 7 aspects of the spiritual anatomy, a couple of them we want to focus on. So, first and foremost, for example, we showed that the term anem in ancient Kemet means skin of human beings or animals, hide, pelt, and so forth. When you look in the Akhan language, enam means flesh. It's the same term. Enam in Akhan is written anem in ancient Kemet, but that E is something that Egyptologists inserted to really spell A-N-M. So they weren't sure of the pronunciation. Is it anem or anum or anim or anom and so forth? So they stuck an E in between consonants. This is what they used to do about 100 years ago in the hieroglyphic dictionaries, just to facilitate pronunciation until they could figure out what the vowel placement is. But we know it's enam, because that means the same thing in Akhan that it means in ancient Kemet, the flesh meat of any animal, the flesh or soft pulpy substance of fruit and so forth, but it's the flesh. And then ahunam, ehun means self and nam means flesh, so that means the body of a person. The ehun, self, nam, physical flesh, that's the flesh body. But it's the flesh meat of any animal. So if you touch your arm, that's your skin and so forth, that is your inam. Same as ancient Kemet, inam. Now, so we have ba, ka, ku, ab, hati, sahu, kahaibit, shoot, and sau. Now let's look at this. The ba is your divine living energy. It's ba for males, ba et for females. The solar energy surging through your physical body and so forth, and your spirit body. It is depicted as a bird, sometimes a bird with a solar disc on its head, or a bird with the head of the human being who that spirit belongs to. But it's the animating life force energy. It is your spirit, your divine living energy, your energetic connection to the spirits of plant life, animal life, mineral life, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, human life, as well as the spirits of the ancestresses and ancestors, the spirits of the deities, the great spirit Ra and Ra'et, or Nyonkumpon and Nyonkunton, the spirit of Amen and Amenet, the supreme being. So that's your divine living energy, that's the Ba. Imagine the solar energy surging through your body. On the physical side, the physical representation is you take a deep breath, you're taking in oxygen, but you're taking in solar fire, the heat surging through you, your divine living energy. That's the Ba for males, Ba'et for females. Now, then you have the term Ka. And Ba, by the way, is pronounced Ba in ancient Kemet is Bra or Bara, and Akhan is Ba and Ra together, Bra or Bra in Akhan. And we show what that linguistic connection is in the article. Then you have the term Ka in ancient Kemet, and you have Ka, Ra, or Kra in Akhan, meaning the soul of a man. And Akhan is the soul in ancient Kemet. Sometimes people define Ka as spirit, and they'll say Ba's soul. But as we've proven in our text, the Ka is the soul. It's a divinity, the divine consciousness in the head region. They show it as the two arms and so forth, sometimes on top of the head, as you can see here. See the person kneeling, and the two arms with the two hands pointing up on top of the head is showing you the location of the soul and so forth. We show in ancient Kemet, Kai means to think out, meditate, call out, cry out, repeat, say. Ka in Akhan, to emit a sound, to utter, speak, say, or tell. But Ka also means to touch, to come into, be in, or bring into contact with, to join. So you'll see that the two arms raising up, Ka, reaching out, touching, grabbing, and so forth, bringing into contact with the Ka, the soul, the divine consciousness, the physical seat or shrine of the Ka in your body is your brain. The physical seat of your Ba or your spirit is your circulatory system. The fiery energy moving, oxygen moving through the blood and so forth that permeates all of your cells. The solar fire energy is your ba, that bird that's surging through your system, flying through your system, and so forth. That is the ba. And then the ka is the soul, the divine consciousness. And just like you have a physical being or entity in your head that regulates everything that should be happening in your body, the brain has the blueprint of everything that should take place in your physical body. You have a spirit body, which is called Sahu in ancient Kamit, Sum Sum and Akhan. That's your spirit body. And in the head region of the spirit body is a radiant force. So if someone saw someone clairvoyantly, saw an ancestral spirit in the home or outside and so forth, you see the spirit body of the individual and a radiant force in the head region. That is the ka for males, ka'et for females. That is the soul, the divine consciousness. It's a divinity that's assigned to you to dwell with you throughout the course of your life. A male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female. And of course, this is for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit meaning African Black people only. So it's called Kra and Okra, Okrawa and Akan. It's called Ori, Inu in Yoruba, the Ori, the inner head, the personal Orisha. In Akan is the personal Abosom or deity. In Vodun is the Selido, the personal Vodou that dwells in your head region, the deity that governs your head. When you say someone says Oshun governs my head in Yoruba tradition, or Obatala and so forth. In Akan, when we say Awusi governs my kra, my head, or you know, Amimenewa governs my head and so forth, form of Heteru and so forth. This is what we're talking about. So that's the soul, the divine consciousness, the spirit's brain. Written into your spirit's brain, the soul, the divine consciousness is your divine function you are to execute in the world. How you are to operate, what kind of energy complex you've been given, how to wield that energy complex. If you're assigned to a fiery divinity, then you're given a fiery energy complex to execute a fiery function in creation. If you're assigned to a water divinity, then utilize that cool, watery energy, and you learn how to wield that to contribute to the benefit of our community. So here's the portion we want to get to. Now you have the term Aku as well as Akut, the male and female title. That's the quote unquote inner eye. So your capacity to see things clairvoyantly, that comes from the inner eye. The physical seat of the Aku is called Aku, in ancient Kemet, masculine Akut, feminine, or Eku, masculine Ekut, feminine, and so forth. The physical seat of that is your pineal gland. That is the physical seat, manifestation of the Aku, Akut, that spiritual force. That is the dwelling place or the shrine for Tehuti and Seshat within your body. Now, so what do we say about the Aku? If you look at the language of ancient Kemet, they say the spirit soul of a god or man and so forth, and they have a solar disk, which is a radiant disk with the rays coming down and so forth. The eye of Ra, the eye of Heru, fiery light of the sun, a flame goddess, the fire Uraeus on the pharaoh's crown, the name of a crown, the Urae on the royal crown, and so forth. And then you also have the words of power, protective formulae, spells, and they give an example, the magical formulae of Thoth, which is Tehuti, the divinity of divine wisdom. But the term Aku also means light, splendor, radiance, brilliance, glorious deeds, splendid acts, and so forth. The two eyes of Heru Ra, Akuti, the sun and the moon, and so forth. And then if someone's light or illuminated or shining or bright or brilliant, beings of light, it says wise, instructed folk. Aku in ancient Kemet, you'll find that same term with the nasal O in Akhan. When you see it's not ho, it's the nasal O. It's ehun, ehun, ehun. That comes from eku in ancient Kemet. It's pronounced ehun in Akhan. And then when you look at the article and the linguistics associated with it, Ehum means the marrow, the bones, in the bones, the brain, and so forth. When it's reduplicated, Ehum, the spirit of a man, and so forth. Ehum, deep, very deep, set of a wound, a well, eyes in their cavity. Then you also have Ehunu, the bark of a tree, the rind, the husk, the shell, the rind of a pineapple, and so forth. So what we're talking about here, and then let's just go down real quick. You have Hua, to be white, pale, light colored, bright. Silver is white and gold, and so forth, to shine, to glisten, to glitter. Hua, whiteness, and so forth. And then it also says Hua, to praise, to extol beyond merit, to flatter. So what we're saying in this article and showing is that the same term, Ehum, which means the eye, deep within the inner eye, the luminous eye, and so forth. The right and left eye of Ra and Heru, the sun and the moon, and so forth, the solar and lunar eyes, and so forth. The inner eye, the third eye, the eye of illumination. Ehum means to illuminate, shining, bright, brilliant, to see in the darkness. The moon shines light in the darkness so you can navigate your way throughout the darkness so you don't run into predators or harm yourself or injure yourself, and so forth. When the sun leaves, you need something in the darkness to help light your way. So an illuminated one comes forward to illuminate your path in the darkness. When we're in the darkness of ignorance and we go inward, we become illuminated through the shrine of Tehuti and Ma'at. We access divine wisdom and we find out what path we should take in life when we attune to the Ekut, the illuminated one, the shrine within, deep within the third eye, and so forth. And then people who are illuminated, ones who are honorable elders and eldresses who become honored ancestresses and ancestors, ones who lived in harmony with divine law, lived in harmony with divine wisdom and manifested that, lived in harmony with Tehuti and Seshat, the male and female forces of divine wisdom and illumination, and so forth. Those kinds of individuals are illuminate. Those people are the Aku, the Akutu. That's a praise name for honored ancestresses and ancestors. All ancestresses and ancestors are not honorable. Some were criminals, some were thieves, some were, all kinds of things. We only evoke the honorable class of ancestresses and ancestors. Those who became honored elders and eldresses, Nananomsom on earth. And when they transitioned as Nananomsom, spiritually cultivated elders and eldresses who became spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. And they had to demonstrate over the course of years consistently living in harmony with divine law, with divine order, without compromise, consistently for years. And once they achieve that, then they naturally crystallize into that function. So they're illuminate because they live in harmony with that divinity, those two divinities. But also, when someone is living in harmony with order, they have a bright, vibrant, strong aura, or a kahibit, as we say in ancient Kamit. And when those people transition, they don't have a dark, murky looking spirit. If you see them clairvoyantly, they have a bright, vibrant aura. So even in the darkness, they are illuminate, similar to stars in the sky, because they are literally illuminate. So this is why they talk about stars being Aku and Akut and so forth. It's not because we come from a different star system. That's nonsense. We're not extraterrestrials. That's idiocy. We're talking about those who live in harmony with divine order. They have an increased endowment or dispensation of energy from Ra and Ra'et, who's called in Yonkumpon and in Yonkunton and Akhan and Odumare and Oshumare in Yoruba, and Dan, Idahuedo and Vodun. We have a dispensation, an increased dispensation of energy from them, and we become more illuminated and vibrant and powerful, able to move matter and so forth. Ancestral spirits able to lend their energy to assist you in your function in the world, overcoming obstacles and so forth, or perceived obstacles. So they become quote unquote illuminate figuratively, but also literally. But the seat of the third eye, physiologically, is the pineal gland for Tehuti and Seshat. And the third eye, or the pineal gland, is a light-sensitive gland. When light hits the gland, it secretes serotonin or melatonin, depending on the needs of the body and so forth. And that affects a number of different processes in the body. So, of course, linguistically, we show that Ehum means the self in Akan. Ehum has to do with what is deep within the cavity, in the eyes and so forth. Ehum meaning a rind or a husk or a shell, the rind of the pineapple, the pine, and so forth. Ehum meaning shining, glittering, glistening, the same definitions in Akan that you find in ancient Kamit. So we just wanted to show that that part of the spiritual anatomy deep within the third eye region, that is the Ehum, Ekut, the illuminate space. Now, so let's get into the book we want to focus on tonight. Just want to set that up. And of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat room. Hold on a second. Okay. So we wrote this book. This book was published actually yesterday, September 16th, was the 7-year anniversary of the publishing of this book. We published 31 books to date. As we said, all 31 can be downloaded and so forth for free from our website. But the Tehuti book, we were talking about Tehuti, as you can see here. Let me just expand it a little bit. You see the habui bird, so-called ibis, but habui bird and so forth. And what we were showing, a large portion of the book is showing that the Sankofa bird in the Akhan tradition, you hear about the symbol Sankofa and so forth. That Sankofa bird is the habui bird. Sankofa in that context is in Akan the same as Fa in Vodun and Ifa in Yoruba and Afa in Igbo and so forth. It is the divinity Tehuti. Now, but we're going to also get into Het Heru as well. So we wrote this book, 7-year anniversary. We released it on the first day. It was September 16th, 7 years ago. That was the first day of our 7-day observance. And we released it on that day. But we want to get into some detailed info here. Now, as you can see here, we always make and show the continuity of culture. You see the symbol here. From ancient Kamit, you see the same symbol, which is one of the versions of Sankofa in Akan. So when you see the Adinkra symbols in the Akan tradition, you see that's one version of Sankofa. We're going to show why it looks like that. And then you see the same symbol on a gate here in North America. Akan people who are forced into North America continue to use the Adinkra symbols. There are hundreds of Adinkra symbols. Each one is associated with an ebe or proverb. Each one is connected to specific abosom or deities and so forth, governing every aspect of life in Akan culture. When you look at the corpus of Adinkra symbols, the hundreds of Adinkra symbols, the proverbial wisdom associated with them, it represents and encompasses all aspects of creation and the lessons of all aspects of creation. The Adinkra symbol corpus is an encyclopedia of the nature of creation. So, and of course, there are wisdom teachings associated with that and that derive from that. So you see the ancient symbol, it was preserved in Akan culture and it continued to be utilized by Akan people who were forced into North America. Those who were forced to work on ironworks, some people were forced on plantations, some people were forced to work in distilleries, some people were working in, as blacksmiths and so forth. Some people were working with ironworks and so forth, wrought iron. And we did that during enslavement and after we freed ourselves from enslavement and so forth. And you'll see all over the United States, gates and doors and, railings and so forth. and you'll see the various Adinkra symbols in Akan culture. You'll also see them on certain grave markers carved in the wood of the coffins and so forth, a number of different things. Even in trees sometimes, inscribed in stones and so forth, we left these Adinkra symbols as marks saying we were here and we were preserving our culture. So it's a continuity of culture from ancient Kamit and Kamit through West Africa, Afuraitkaitnit, Ghana, and Ivory Coast into North America. And of course, you will also find that in the Caribbean, like Jamaica and Guyana and Suriname and so forth, wherever Akan people were forced into the Western Hemisphere, you will find these Adinkra symbols in the ironworks as well. And those are the two Adinkra symbols, the bird as well as the heart-shaped symbol. So let's get into it. Now, we want to show continuity of culture because when we're talking about these divinities, and we will show the names of Tehuti and Seshat, major names in Akhan are Abe and Aberewa and so forth, and they exist in all of the traditional Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit African ancestral cultures. You will find them in every culture under their own names. Of course, you'll find Tehuti, for example, is Orunmila in Yoruba, also called Ifa. I'm going to show why he's called Ifa. It's called Fa and Vodun and Afa and Igbo. Every culture, they have a name for Tehuti and Seshat based on their language. So we wanted to show that here, and then we get into some more details. So the term for nose in ancient Kemet, you see it says Fenet, but in the Coptic dialect, as you see right here, it says Shante. Shante, this is a SH. This triangular structure is an A, NTE, Shante. So Fent or Fenet or Shante and so forth. Let's go down a little bit further. And then you have Kant, which is also pronounced in the Coptic dialect, Shat, Shat, and later becomes Shat, the nose, the face. So you have Fent, the nose. And another version of that is Kent or Kant, also pronounced Shat, Shat, the nose, the face. Two different versions. It's really the cage symbol, the N symbol, and the T symbol. And here's the F, the N, and the T. Now, it's really spelled FNT, and the KH symbol, the N symbol, and the T symbol. And once again, Egyptologists back then, they would stick an E in between consonants if they weren't sure of the vowel placement. If they didn't know whether or not it was an A or an E, I, or U, and so forth, they would arbitrarily stick an E in there as a placeholder until they will find out what the real vowel placement is, and then they would replace it with that. So in this particular dictionary, you'll see it says Fent, but it's really F. The viper is the F, the wavy line is the N, and the little loaf of bread, the half circle, is the T, FNT. Fent. And here, Kent or Kant or Shat, two different ways to say the nose, also the face, but the nose, and this is a side view of a nose. So Fent or Fenet, Shent or Shenet, Kent, Kenet, or Shent, Shenet, and so forth. You'll see some people pronounce it Shent, and in Coptic it becomes Shent, but it can be a KH sound, or like the K sound, or the Sh sound. That particular symbol, and it's usually a little circular, dark circle symbol, a Siev and so forth. It can be the K sound or the Sh sound. So they're right at KH. It can be K or Ch or Cha, just like in English. The CH combo can be a K sound like in chrome or chronology. It can be a Ch sound like in check. It can be a Sh sound as in Charlotte or chagrin and so forth. That comes from this ancient sound structure. The K sound can be K or Sh and so forth. Why is that important? Because in the Akan language, The term for nose is ahwene, 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 the nose. And you see there's an interchange between the FW and the HW in the Akan language. So for example, the term ehwene in Akan, some Akan people pronounce it ehwene, hwene like a HW, and some pronounce it, as you see in the Akan dictionary here, with an FW, afwene, afwene. So some say afwene, some say ahwene or ashwene. Now, that's important because when you look at the definition, ashwene, the nose, but it's also pronounced by some Akan speakers as afwene, the nose. We're looking at your Kamit, FNT, fene, nose, KHNT, kene or shene, nose. And Akan, fwene, nose, also hwene or shrene, nose. And you'll see in the Akan dictionary, HUA, hua. In the Fanti dialect, it's HWA, hua. In the Akan dialect, which is also the Achim dialect and so forth, HWA equals FWA. So it's either hua or fwa. And when you say those together, HWA, hua, and then FWA, fwa, one is just more harsh, but it's very directly related. And what does that mean? To scrape, to scratch, hua or fwa, to scrape or scratch. Then you have fwe, to scrape or scratch. And fwe, meaning to scrape or scratch, is also the root of fwene, which means nose, to scrape or scratch, and so forth. And then you have fwe, to direct the eye towards an object. Hwe, to look repeatedly, intensely. So what do all these definitions mean? One of the titles of Tehuti in ancient Kamit is Fenti, or also Fanti, depending on the dialect. Fanti, the root is Fant, he of the nose, he of the font. So that's like saying, literally, instead of saying font e, that's like saying nose e, one that has a nose or is nosy looking into something and so forth. Nose, font, or fent e, nosish or nosy. One of the nose, one who has a nose is sniffing around or looking around or poking around and so forth, sticking your nose in somebody's business and so forth. But he has the great beak. Tehuti has the great beak. His animal totem has the great beak. He of the nose, he of the great beak or the great nose. Font, he of the great font, or fent, he of the great nose. So you have two different versions of that. One of the 42 assessors of Al-Sar, Fanti, and they'll show the side view of the face with the nose and the eye and so forth. They also show the deity seated with his beak and everything. Different versions of the same term. So we were just showing that fwet, meaning to look, to see, to examine and so forth. There's also fet or fwet, the root of the term fwet, which means nose. Fet or fenet means nose. Fwene in Akan means nose. Fwene means to look, to see, to search. Fwet means to look, to see, and search, and so forth. It's the same title in Akan for the nose, but also the one that seeks and searches and so forth. We're just showing linguistically we have the same terminology. Hwet, hwet, to look repeatedly and intensely, to look for, to seek, to search for. Or hwefo, or fwefo, a looker, overseer, superintendent, and so forth. We're showing the connection between his great nose and that title. There's also a title that we'll get back to, Bre Chiri Hunuatie, in the Akan language. That means one who is all-knowing, one who can see in front of him or behind him. That's the omniscient one, all-knowing. That is the title of Tehuti. We'll get into that a little bit further down. But another title, you have the term Te in Akhan, meaning to perceive by the nerves of sensation, to feel, to perceive within oneself. Te. Tehuti as Bre Chiri Hunuatie in Akhan. He is also called Te in Akhan, the one who sees, perceives, feels, understands, and so forth. He is called Te. That is his title in Akhan, from the root term Te, meaning to see or perceive. Now, the name Te in Akhan for this deity, as the title of the deity, is derived from the same title of Tehuti in ancient Kamit. One of his titles is Tek, the plummet, the little weight which served as the tongue of the scales, and Teki, the ibis, meaning Tehuti, the crane. Teki, the title of Tehuti as regulator of times and seasons and so forth. It comes from the root Tek. That's his title. It said Tek. Here's Tehuti right here. Tehuti is taking note of the weighing of the heart against the feather and so forth. He's performing his Tek function. That little plummet right there. And you have the heart and the feather being weighed on the scales of Ma'at and so forth. If your heart is not weighed down by anxiety because you've been engaged in disordered behavior, you have a light heart, then it's light as a feather. When you transition, you see the person's spirit here. They transition, their spiritual heart is placed on the scale of Ma'at. If it balances out the feather, because it's not heavy and weighed down by lust, anxiety, self-destructive activity and so forth. If he had a light heart because he always lived in harmony with divine order, it will balance out the lightness of a feather. And then he can pass on from that test to be accepted in the ancestral community, the pristine ancestral community. And Tehuti, taking note of the weighing, is engaging in his Tek function. He's taking note of the weighing. So he's called Tek in this capacity. In the talking drums text in Akan culture, the cosmology is laid out. It says, Hina kose, Hina kose, Hina kose, Hina okose te, mate kose anansi, ma anansi kose odumankuma, ma odumankuma boadie. It says, who gave word, who gave word, who gave word, who gave word to the abosom te, to the deity te, for te to go and tell the deity Anansi, for Anansi to go and tell the deity Odumankoma, for Odumankoma to complete or form the world creation. So it's a quote unquote riddle and so forth. Who gave word to the divinity of divine wisdom? Who gave him the instructions so that he could go and tell Anansi, who's the messenger, and the messenger will go and tell Odumankoma, who's the one who completes creation. He's called Atem in ancient Kemet. He's Odumankoma and Akhan. They're showing the cosmology of Tehuti, the divinity of divine wisdom. He learns from the supreme being, the creator and creatress, what needs to happen in creation. He formulates that as a plan, him as well as Seshat. He gives that message to Anansi, who's the messenger who runs all throughout creation to spread the word. And then the divinity fashions the world according to the dictates of the supreme being as mouth or spoken by the mouthpiece by Tehuti. But the key is the divinity is called Te. He's called Te in Akan. He's called Tek in Kemet. He's the divinity of divine wisdom who received the word. And they say, who gave the word? Amen and Amenet, through the agency of Ra and Ra, give the word to the divinity of divine wisdom so he can draw up those plans, draw up those blueprints with his stylist and so forth, him as well as Seshat. And the blueprint of creation is laid out when they hear the word from the supreme being and the creator and creatress. And we say that here, we say who gave word. Of course, Nyame wa Nyame in Akhan, which is Amenet, and Amen, the great mother and great father, supreme being. And we talk about the entire cosmology associated with that. When you see In Akan culture, the Ocheame, the spokesperson of the sovereign with his staff. You don't speak directly to the king or queen mother, you speak to the Ocheame, and then they whisper into the ear of the king or queen mother, and then they whisper back in the ear of the Ocheame, and then they speak what the sovereign has proclaimed. And the term Ocheame, the spokesperson, comes from Ucheme in ancient Kamit, which is a title of Tehuti. We wrote a whole article about that, and this is the front page. In fact, let me just show that real quick. Show that article real quick. Okay, we wrote a short article detailing this whole process. So the Ocheame in Akhan is the Ocheme, the spokesperson, the function of Tehuti in the Akhan tradition. So Ocheame in Akhan is a speaker, reporter, interpreter, one of the elders of a king, or they say a Negro town or community, the linguist and so forth. And then you will find Ochem, to repeat, to narrate, to recount, to tell a story, a dream, and so forth in ancient Kamit. The teller, recorder, a lay priest, a proclaimer in ancient Kamit. Ocheme, the great recorder, and so forth. The king's herald in chief. This is the king. This is the Ocheame, which is Ocheme. In Akan, we pronounce Ohime, Ocheme, the great recorder or mouthpiece of the king, and so forth. And we were just showing that so we just wanted to show that direct, unbroken cosmological structure, and you'll find the same thing with regard to ritual when a deity possesses somebody, and we have an Ocheame to walk around with them to assist them. So when they give, the spirit speaks to the person who's possessed, to the community, the person who's assisting or attending to them can transmit those messages. So we just wanted to show that that function continues in our Akan culture today, fully incorporated in ritual and all of that. So let's get into when they talk about he of the great nose, to scrape or to scratch, fa or foi, to scrape or scratch, he of the great nose, fa, to search, to look into, and so forth, fa or foi or fue, and so forth. You'll see that this is what the animal totem of the divinity is doing, scraping or scratching, fa or foi, with his great nose, fa or foi. And now we get into Seshat, the female divinity, goddess of learning, wisdom, architecture, the female divinity of divine wisdom. So it's important to note that the counterpart of Tehuti is not Ma'at. In reality, even though, of course, they work together and so forth, but it's not Tehuti and Ma'at, it's Tehuti and Seshat. And Sesh means scribe, and you see her with the pen and so forth, and marking the notched palm branch and so forth. She's the one dealing with writing, just like Tehuti. The term Sesh means scribe. Seshat means female scribe. So Tehuti is also called Sesh. He's the male scribe, inventor of writing, along with Seshat, the female scribe, inventor of writing. And here they are together again. So then we start getting into Tehuti turning back and very Chiri Hunwade, one who looks behind and who can see behind and in front of him. We start showing that the Sankofa symbol in Akan culture is coming directly from Tehuti and ancient Kamit. But we want to go down and get to a little bit more information. So you see the Sankofa bird reaching back and grabbing the egg. Now, symbolically, they are talking about returning. So the proverb for Sankofa is Sewo Werifi, Nawo Sankofa Yenchi. If you forget and you return, go and grasp Sankofa. It is not taboo. It is not hated. You return, go and grasp. Return to your past to grab from that reservoir of wisdom so you can solve a problem or overcome an obstacle in the present. When we've been pulled away from our culture and so forth, even on a mundane level, if you lost your keys, you have to return in your mind back to your past and retrace your steps and see where was I at a few minutes before this? Go back further. You keep going back, you return to your past, and then you remember you were in a different room of the house, and then you go back to that house, grab what you need, and then you can solve your problem. If you look at the way we have developed all these various health conditions that are very negative, heart disease and diabetes and high blood pressure and so forth, if we return back Sankofa, what was the dietary practice we had prior to imitating the whites and offspring? Even if we look back 150 years or so forth, when we were living mainly plant-based diet primarily and so forth, if we look at the way we were eating back then and even on the continent and so forth, and then compared to what we consume now and how we operate now, we say, I'm going to go back, Sankofa, return, San, Ko, go, Fa, and grasp from my ancestral past so I can solve, an issue in the present. You go back to what was pure before it got corrupted and reclaim that and then employ that to overcome any obstacle. When you look at this symbol, looking back to the past, that includes the ancestral culture. Going back to the root, the origins, you're returning, looking back, grabbing from that reservoir of knowledge that has been accumulated over 1 million generations of earthly experience. We draw from that wisdom, we go back to the past, and we take that wisdom and apply it to overcome any obstacle or innovate to come up with new solutions to issues that have never existed in a certain expression before. But we have to, dwell on that. You're going back not only to your ancestral culture, but the foundations of the ancestral culture. Where does that come from? When the forces of nature first began to possess our people, operate within our bodies, spirit possession takes place, and now we have insight into the nature of a divinity that animates the sun, moon, earth, rivers, oceans, mountains, atmosphere, and so forth. And we also learn the properties of these different features of creation, and we can harness these properties to establish different aspects of civilization, to build, to innovate, to create, and so forth, to learn plant life, animal life, mineral life from medicine and everything else. So that's returning back. When you see the Sankofa bird reaching back and grabbing the egg is representative of what's coming forward, the new child that's going to come forward. It's also talking about a returning ancestor or ancestress. So you're reaching back to grab the egg, but you're reaching back to the past to bring it into the present. A returning ancestor spirit, an ancient elderess is eventually going to be drawn into the womb and become a quote unquote egg and so forth. A fertilized egg is going to be birthed as a child and so forth. There's an ancient wisdom within the child that needs to be brought forward. This is an ancient spirit operating temporarily through the body of a child and so forth that will blossom and open. When we have culture in place, it can cultivate and open up and release that which is rooted and buried within that child. Now, what's important with regard to that, grasping the egg, the future, but also represents the past. The symbol that looks like a heart symbol is really the two habui birds, Tehuti and Seshat, reaching back and grabbing the egg. That's what you're looking at. And physiologically, you'll see the two birds reaching back through the fallopian tubes to grab the egg. And once the egg is released, of course, once it's fertilized within the fallopian tubes, that means an ancestral spirit will take up residence in that egg, and the future child is the return of an ancient ancestor or ancestress. So it's completing the loop, just like we do in the new year. The end of one cycle, the warm cycle, the beginning of a new cycle, the cool and seeding cycle, the end of the harvest time, and you harvest the fruits of your labor. The beginning of the seeding time, you seed or plant the seeds and so forth, so that the cycle continues. We say the ends of the year have met. The end of one cycle, the beginning of another. The coming forward of a new child, a new birth and so forth. But when you're reaching back to bring that ancient ancestor or ancestress back into the womb, you're bringing a new life, but you're also bringing an ancient life into the present. But this is the symbol here. Within the womb of the woman, you'll see the shrines for Tehuti and Seshat, the male habui bird or ibis bird, the female habui bird or ibis bird. Now, the fallopian tubes themselves are governed by the female divinity Het Heru. She has a number of different titles. In Akhan, she's called Cheche. That's the same as Het Her in ancient Kamit. She's also called Afi or Afia or Afua, which comes from Fait, a title of Het Heru in ancient Kamit. She's called Oshun in Yoruba. She's Erzoli or Erzuli in Vodun. Same divinity, same force in creation. Sacred, she operates through the planet Afi, as it's called in Akhan, so-called Venus, but we call it Afi. People born on her day, Afi or Fida Friday, I'll call Afi or Afu and so forth. But when she operates through the planet Saturn, or Amimini, she's called Min Miniwa or Amin Miniwa. And people who are born on her day are Ama or Amit or Ame or Amemeniwa and so forth. But a sacred symbol, her major sacred symbol is the cow, which is called Kayet in ancient Kamit. You'll see this symbol with the little cow's ears. This is Het Heru's face and her hair and so forth. And she has the cow's ears. Of course, that is the sacred Sankofa symbol. And now when you look at it, these are different expressions of symbols of Het Heru. You see the cow itself. That's her major animal totem. Then you'll see her face. And that is from when we visit the mortuary temple of Hatshepsut, right on the side of that mortuary temple is the chapel of Het Heru, and this is the face of Het Heru is on a number of different columns in that chapel, and you will see that she has the ears of the cow, showing that's her animal totem and so forth. You see her ears of the cow right here, and then you'll see that she governs the fallopian tubes. Het Heru governs the central attraction, that precursor to the fusion of the Afurakani man and Afuraitkaitnit woman. When they talk about Het Heru being governing sensuality and love and so forth, the force, that central attraction that draws together the Afurakani man and Afuraitkaitnit woman so that we can fuse together physiologically. That's the force that draws together the sperm and ovum so they can fuse together harmoniously. And once they fuse together harmoniously and the DNA is braided together and so forth, then the unfolding cell mitosis or cell division can happen. But she's that force the central force that draws the energy together in a harmonious fashion, takes two complementary opposites and fuses them together in a harmonious fashion. So when you talk about her shrine in the body, the fallopian tubes are her shrine in the body. That's why when you see her hair and so forth, you see the Sankofa symbol. That's the structure that you're looking at with regard to that. And then, of course, you see her face, the face of the cow with the two horns and so forth. This is the face of Heru inside the womb of the woman. This is the cow's face, the cow's horns and so forth. Of course, the two ovaries. This is Heru, the cow, inside the body of the woman. And that's why she's always associated with the sacred Ka'et, or a cow. And then when they show the ancient pre-dynastic sculptures of Heru, and they'll say the ancient bird woman and so forth, and they show the ancient structure here, it is a representation of the sacred Achinebois, or an animal totem of Heru. Is a different expression of that. This is representative of this fertility function of Heru. This is one of these sculptures from 7,000 years ago. So once again, we're showing her shrine in the body, how it manifests as an animal totem, manifests within the culture and so forth. This is her. Now, when we say the Sankofa process, when you return, go and grasp, when you talk about reincarnation, you're returning and going to grasp from the ancestral realm, from the past, to bring an ancestral spirit into the world, into the present. Just like Sankofa, you go back in your past to figure out what happened, what went wrong, grab that wisdom and bring it to the present to solve a problem. But we're going to bring an ancestral spirit. We have to go to the ancestral past, go into the ancestral realm, grasp that spirit, Sankofa, bring it into the present, and it comes into the womb of the woman and so forth. That's a physiological Sankofa process. Return, sign, call, go, fa, grasp, and bring that into the present. So we said the Sankofa process takes place within the sanctuary, the shrine of Heru, within the Afuraitkaitnit, or African female body, the fallopian tube structure. This is why Tehuti and Seshat, twin habwi birds, are also present, flanking the sycamore tree or bush of Heru at the spiritual rebirth of the Ainsu of the king. So this is the spiritual, the spirits of the male and his wife and so forth. They are transitioned. They're at the sacred sycamore bush or tree being fed. Now, here you have Tehuti and Seshat. They both have their writing utensils and so forth, their stylus and so forth. They're holding the notched palm branch. They're declaring what's going to happen within the life of the king. When the king is born into the world and so forth, they write out what his name is going to be, that unique collection of sound vibrations that once is spoken or heard or contemplated, that unique configuration of sound vibrations that make up the individual's name is a formula of energy that's unique to the spirit of that person, that matches his spiritual anatomy, his configuration. And when that name is spoken or heard or contemplated, it stimulates his spirit body to activate. And that's what real names do. And today is Sunday, or Awusida. The proverb for today, or Ebe, for this Sunday, the Sunday within our 7-day cycle, is Kradinye Nyame wa Nyame Ocheame, which means the soul name is the Ocheame, or the spokesperson of Nyame wa Nyame, or Amenet Amen, to the spirit, to the person's spirit. Your name is your spokesperson. It's a spokesperson from Nyame wa Nyame to you. Every time someone says your name, it's a collection of sound vibrations in a unique configuration. When you have a real name, not the enemy's name, when you speak the enemy's name, it's a set of discordant vibrations that are out of harmony with your spirit body, your spiritual anatomy. You seek to consume that, or contemplate that, or hold that, or identify with that. unique, that configuration of discordant vibrations that's like swallowing poison. Always off base, always off kilter, always discordant, because you're trying to identify with and consume and ingest a configuration of discordant vibrations. Your spirit body is no different. Look at a trumpet, or trombone and so forth. When you blow through a trumpet, trombone, horn and so forth, French horn, tuba, you can blow through a trumpet, you have a certain sound. You put that down, pick up a French horn, blow through it, the sound is different. Put that down, pick up a trombone, the sound is different, you blow through that. It's the same source of air, but because the configuration of brass is different, the sound vibrations that emanate are different. The same divine living energy from Ra and Ra'et, or Inyokumpon, Inyokunton, or Odumare, Oshumare, or Dai, Ada, Huedo, the same divine living energies surging through Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, but because your physical body and your spirit body is unique to you in a unique configuration, the collection of sound vibrations that are emanating from you at all times, as long as life force energy is circulating through your unique spiritual form, just like a wind chime. When you hear wind moving through a chime, there's a certain set of vibrations that emanate. If it's a small chime, certain sounds come forth. If it's a longer wind chime or more broad, a certain configuration of sound vibrations move forward. Same wind, different structure. Same life force energy circulating through your physical body and spirit body, but because your physical body is unique to you, nobody looks exactly like you, or your spirit body has a unique configuration. Life force energy circulating through you is generating a unique configuration of sound vibrations every moment of every day. And that, when you replicate it with your vocal cords, is your true name. Your true name is not Thomas or John or McGillicuddy or James and so forth. That's a corrupt, perverse, discordant set of vibrations that is creating disorder within your spirit. When you ingest that, identify with it, seek to identify with it or answer to it and so forth. But when you enunciate your true name, you stimulate your spirit body to fully awaken its energy. Now, so when they write the name of the king and so forth, or the queen mother, in that Shinu, misnomer cartouche and so forth, that's the configuration of energy that he brings or she brings into the world. Now, this is the bush. That's the bush. Tehuti and Seshat are inside of that bush. That is the physiologically, that's the fallopian tubes, the bush, and inside the fallopian tubes where the conception will take place, you have Tehuti and Seshat within the sanctuary of Heteru. The fallopian tube structure is Heteru's structure, and Tehuti and Seshat are operating within that structure with regard to bringing an ancestral spirit back into the world, Sankofa process. In this stela, you see the two habwi birds right here. And then in the Akan culture, in Patakro, in the Asante region of Ghana, you see these two Sankofa birds on top of the symbol and so forth. That's just the continuity of culture. And once again, we continued that same symbol when we use that symbol as a tattoo, or we have it on graves, you have it on clothing and so forth. You see, quote unquote, slave cemeteries, and they have the Sankofa symbol carved on the, on the coffin and so forth, or on the headstone, whether it's a wooden headstone or a stone and so forth. We continued that. These Adinkra symbols are also matrices or so-called sigils and so forth. They are matrices of energy, and when they're drawn and energy is plugged into them, they generate a certain configuration of energy that's a welcome mat to specific abosom, specific divinities and ancestral spirits. So those are the two now. And the final part is we talk about the sacred palm tree. You see the palm frond that Tehuti is marking. You see the palm frond that Seshat is marking. It's used as a symbol for enumerating time and the cycles of time and so forth, and counting and all of that. But this palm tree, you'll find it in various Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit cultures with the same cosmological implications. So Fai Nkat, the god whose body formed the pillar of the great scale. So the pillar of the scales is a deity called Fai. And what we talk about here in Vodun is there's a story about the divinity Badu. She's sitting on top of the palm tree. And Legba is the divinity who goes back up and down the palm tree, and he flips open her eyes, open and closing and so forth. And that has to do with divination. But the palm tree itself is called Fa. That's the divinity Fa. And Legba goes up Fa, the palm tree, to get on top to connect with Badu. And that Badu, who's on the top of Fa, top of the palm tree, and has her eyes that are opening or closing, and that has to do with divination and so forth. That is Badu in Vodun is actually the female Orisha Odu in Yoruba. Fa in Vodun is Ifa, but Fa, the palm tree, with Badu on top of the palm tree, is the same as Tehuti, which is Fa, and then Ma'at, she's on top. Now, when we look at and you can read the story in the book, but we said Fa is the name of the deity operating through the pillar of the scales. And when you look at a blown up picture of the pillar, Fa is the name of the pillar of the scales, and on top is the goddess Ma'at. So you have the goddess Ma'at, who deals with divine law, on top of the pillar called Fa Nkat Kamit. In Vodun, you have Badu, deals with divine law with regard to divination. She's on top of a pillar called Fa, and that's the deity of divination. Same divinity, same name, same cosmological structure. This is Ma'at, this is Ma'ah. That's Tehuti and Seshat, of course. We talked briefly here about palm nuts and Yoruba divination. So you see the palm nuts are being used in divination. Just like in Fa and Vodun, you're talking about the palm tree and the eyes of Badu open and close, these cowries and so forth. That's to do with divination, the palm tree. In Yoruba, the Ikin or the palm nuts are used for divination, for Fa, divination to cast, Ifa or Dafa and so forth. And then when we go back up, we look at the Akan tradition. Abe is the palm tree in Akhan, but Abe is also a divinity. And what we show in this particular piece, and we're not going to go through that whole portion right there. In one of the Anansi stories in Akan tradition, it says they say there once was a woman and that she went to a certain Abe, a palm tree, which stood there in the water, that she might consult it about childbearing. And when she went, Abe, the palm tree, said, I shall give you what you want, but the child with whom I shall present you, when he rises up, will never do any work. She said, I agreed to that. It was not 2 days, it was not 3 days when she conceived and gave birth. And there's a longer portion of the story, but what's key is there's a divinity called Abe operating through the palm tree. She came to consult the divinity, meaning she went for divination. And he was divine. He divined for her the spirit. Abe is the same. Braid Chirihunuwate, which is Tehuti, which is Tek, which is Fa, Vodun, and Ifa in Yoruba is Abe, the palm tree in Akhan and so forth. She consulted him. He gave her what she wanted, but then he gave her instructions. And on the feminine side, you have Aberewa. The term Aberewa is an ancient, older, wise, elderess woman and so forth, but that's also a title of the wise female divinity. So when there's an impasse, when there's a tribunal of elders and eldresses and they're trying to decide about what's going to happen in a particular case, if they can't come to an agreement, everybody agrees that there's a certain small group of elders and eldresses, and they say, Mereko Bisa Abrewa, we are going to consult with Aberiwa, going to consult with the old woman and so forth. And when we come back, that judgment is going to be the judgment. They go do divination, and then they come back, and that's the final word. And we quote from a story in ancient Kamit when Ra asked Tehuti to write a letter to the great mother Neet. He wanted her to rule as to who would become the new king. So there was discrepancy about whether Heru or Set should be the new king. And when there was back and forth going, Ra the Greater told Tehuti, write a letter to the great mother Neet and ask her what the decision should be. And when she returns the decision, that's what it's going to be. That same cosmological structure you find in ancient Kemet thousands of years ago is the same cosmological structure we find in our Akhan culture today. Merekobisa Abrewa, we are going to consult Abrewa, the older or elderest woman, and her word will be the law. Now, who is Aberewa? Abere, from the root Abe, which is the palm tree and so forth. Seshat has the palm tree, this is a palm tree, on her head. Some fools tried to say that was a marijuana leaf, which is ridiculous because they don't know the culture or cosmology. She's holding the palm frond. The palm tree is utilized for divination in Akhan and Yoruba and Igbo and Ewe and all across the board, but also in ancient Kemet. Tehuti has the palm frond. Seshat has the palm frond. She has the palm tree on her head and so forth. She is called Aberewa in Akhan, the elderest woman of the palm and so forth. Even the term Ebe, which means proverb, comes from the term Abe, which is palm tree, and the palm nut and so forth. Because when you look at the palm nut, it looks like a simple entity, but when you open it up, it has, the oils and the nutrients and the juices and everything else that can deal with a number of different issues. And a proverb or a parable and so forth, and Ebe, a proverb, sounds very simple, but when you delve into it, it covers a vast area of knowledge. So, divine wisdom teachings are called Ebe after the palm tree Abe, male Abe, female Aberewa. She has the palm frond on her head as a headdress. She's the chieftainess, diviner, and so forth. And so we were just showing that structure. And then when you talk about the divination process, you see Tehuti or Seshat in the form of the habui bird scraping or scratching. You see the bird scraping or scratching the surface to get underneath the surface so they can grab what is underneath the surface and bring it into view and so forth. As you can see, he's grabbed this food item and so forth. When you divine, you scrape beneath the surface of what's happening to get into the spirit realm, to see the shaping forces of what's taking place. So you can grab the ancestral wisdom and show the querent or the client what needs to be done and so forth. But that motion and that function and that cosmology is where we get the term, of course, we mentioned before. Hold on a second. We mentioned the term foi in Akhan means to scrape or scratch. You'll find that fa means to scrape or scratch in Yoruba. And when they scrape or scratch, just like he's scraping through the soil and so forth, looking under the surface to bring what's under the surface to the surface. You see on the Oponifa, the divination tray, they scrape or scratch the symbols or the lines within the Ierosum, the divination powder and so forth. They will talk about Fa means to scrape or scratch. And some Yoruba Babalawos and so forth, they're trying to speculate on the origin of Fa, and they say, well, it must have come from Arabic sand divination, because Fa means to scrape or scratch, and we're scraping and scratching, and they used to scratch in the sand, but it has nothing to do with any Arabic sand divination. Fa means to scrape or scratch because the deity Fant, or Fanti, but Fant with a nasal T, Fant, is a title of Tehuti, and he is the one Fa, he of the great nose, the great Fa, and he scrapes or scratches to see what's under the surface. And then we show the relationship between Het Heru and Tehuti and so forth. It's the same as the cosmological stories associated with Oshun and Orunmila. You'll see Tehuti is the dweller in Kemenu. Kemenu is the city of the eight primordial divinities, and his name is spelled with the 8 strokes, like you see here, with the 8 strokes here. That's how his name is spelled, as the one who is the dweller within Kemenu, the sacred sanctuary of the 8. And you see these 8 strokes. Then you go back, and he is called Fa. And you see the strokes here. This is what we're talking about. And then we finally get to this piece here. This is from the temple of Heru and Edfu. So when we visit Edfu in southern Kamit, you'll see that this entire text is inscribed on the walls of the temple. Large text inscribed all the way across the walls. And you'll see that Ra sent Heru Bedeti, who's the same as Ogun in Yoruba, Bena and Akhan and so forth, the Heru Bedeti, to fight against the enemies and kill the enemies and so forth. And then he sent Heru, the son of Alsar and Alset, to fight along with Heru Bedet. So you have Heru, the son of Alsar and Alset, and Heru Bedet, the son of Ra, and they're fighting the enemies together. And in this particular scene, you see Alset standing behind her son Heru. Alset is holding the rope that's holding the, binding the enemy, while Heru is spearing the enemy to death. And Tehuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, is also holding the enemies captive so that they can be speared to death. So divine wisdom supports the killing, the massacre of the enemy. Divine wisdom never seeks to embrace and love the enemy. Divine wisdom directs us to kill our enemies. That's always been true. So the idiocy of loving your enemies and turning the other cheek is a political ploy to get us to be foolish enough to embrace our enemies so we won't fight back in a divinely sanctioned way, which is to kill our enemies. Okay, so in the appendix, we get into talking about the male divinity Ma'a, and in connection with the female divinity Ma'at, you see him in the form of a sacred monkey on top of the scales. That's Ma'a. And in Akhan, he's shown as a sacred monkey as well. And we just show these. He's the monkey who's the attendant, the little baboon who's the attendant of Tehuti and so forth, with the sacred vessel. And you'll see in Akan, the little monkey with the vessel, he is the attendant of the Abosumfo, the priest and so forth, in Akan shrines and so forth. So we go into some detail about Ma'al, the male deity of divine law and balance, and Ma'at, the female divinity of divine law and balance. Okay. So now that's the information we wanted to focus on tonight. I want to look in the chat room. Of course, if you have any questions, you can check that out. I'm just scrolling through. Now, we also, just so you can see a couple of things that are going on. Of course, if you have any questions, you can post them in the chat because we're basically done. But if you have any questions, of course. So we're going back to Kamit, June 4th through June 12th. Let me show this real quick. So this is our Adikat tour to Kamit and Khanit, Egypt and Nubia. So you'll see all the details. 12 different cities from northern Kamit in Cairo all the way down to southern Kamit and into Khanit, into Nubia, so-called Abu Simbel. We have a number of videos from the tour that we took, previous tour that we took. This, for example, the Nubians, the Nubians who are still living in the south, the original people of Kamit, you see them here. Okay, so we're going to Philae, which is the temple of Set in Paraka, so-called Philae, and then also to Abu Simbel. But we're going to 12 different cities from Apet Asedu, which is so-called Karnak, Apet Reset, which is so-called Luxor, Abju, which is so-called Abydos, Kom Ombo, Edfu, of course, Gaza, so-called Cairo, all the different sites that people see. But then we also have access to, for example, one of the archaeological sites that you have to get a permit in order to enter. So we'll be going there as well. So a number of different things that are taking place. But if you would like to travel with us, we have a few spaces left open for that particular tour, June 4th through June 12th. And this is another one of the, we were out in front of the temple of Ramesu and Nefertari, Ramesu II and Nefertari, and in Khanit, Nubia, so-called Abu Simbel and so forth. So their temples are carved inside of a mountain. You have Ramesu's temple here, and a little bit over you'll see Nefertari's temple and so forth.
And it was ritually taken care of. And we still do that because ritually, when somebody, baby is born, we would take the placenta.
But you will see that we have all the information here.
And take the placenta and bury the placenta.
Now, if you're on the email list, if you're not on the email list, let us know so we can put you on the email list because we send out updates. We had a couple of discounted spots, the 50% off discounted spots, just 2 of those left. So we have details about that. But if you'd like to take advantage of that, or if you just want to make a deposit, you can make a $300 deposit and then make monthly payments until, your payment is due in April and so forth. And then, you'll be done. Then you can make your own payment schedule, just paying once a month. You can determine what amount you pay once a month, but you pay once a month until you pay it off. There's also, we have a couple of PayPal options where they have PayPal financing, where they can stretch it out over 12 or up to 24 months if you go through PayPal. So some people do that. Or some people just do the regular payment plan option that we have where you make your own payment amounts monthly until the trip is paid off. But we have a few spaces left open for that. So if you would like to take one of those last spaces, you can secure your spot with a deposit today. That is on the Adikat page. And let me put that in the chat room. Okay. And I'm just going to go through while I'm checking this out. Just want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Yeah, so Aku and Akut, male and female terms for, it means illuminated, so it could be a descriptive title for the spiritually cultivated class of ancestresses and ancestors, but it's also a division of the spirit, part of the spiritual anatomy, specifically the Aku, the Akut, the physical seat of the Aku, or Akut is the pineal gland, so-called third eye, and so forth. The Adinkra symbol corpus, so you can, if you look on Amazon or Google Books and so forth, there's a book called Cloth as Metaphor. It's like hundreds of Adinkra symbols in that book. That's the book that has the most. Cloth as Metaphor. Put that in the chat room. So there's also the Adinkra dictionary that has about 80 Adinkra symbols, but the Cloth as Metaphor book, it has like over 900 Adinkra symbols. Some of them are variations on the same symbol. So like they may have 3 different versions or 10 different versions of the same symbol. So even though it says 900, it's really about 300 or so. And then you include the variations, it, expands to 900, but it's about 300 plus symbols. So, and they have symbols in that Cloth as Metaphor that the Adinkra dictionary does not have. So both of them are good books to have, but the Cloth as Metaphor book has more than any other one. So Tehuti, the question is, Tehuti is Akhan. Tehuti is the typical title that you find in ancient Kamit, but he has a number of different titles in ancient Kamit. He's called Sesh, he's called Tehuti, he's called Tek, and that's why we show in Akhan, he's called Abe, he's also called Te, he's called Bre Chirihunuadie. He has a number of different titles in Akhan as well. And in this book, let me put the link. You can download this book for free. We go into detail about these different titles in Akhan for the deity. But these deities are forces in nature. So, for example, physically, in English, you have the word sun. In Akan, the word is Oria, which means the sun. In Yoruba, Orun means the sun. We're talking about the same entity, but it's just in different languages. And in the same fashion, or the word for earth in English, Asase in Akan, Onile in Yoruba. We're talking about the same thing, just different languages. So when you look in the different languages of Afurakani people, the forces in nature that animate the suns, moons, stars, oceans, rivers, earth mother, atmosphere, planets, stars, and so forth, they're the same forces in nature, but everybody has their own name for them in Afurakani cultures and dialects, depending on the name. So, you'll have Asase, Afua, the fertile earth mother in Akan tradition. She's called Onile in Yoruba, the fertile earth mother. You have Asase Ya, which is the barren earth mother in Akan. You have Yewa, the Orisha Yewa, who is the barren earth mother who receives the corpses. In Yoruba, we're talking about the same 2 divinities, Asase Ya and Asase Afua, which is Yewa and Onile. But because we speak different languages, we have different titles for them. Okay, so Abe in Akhan, is the palm tree, and that's in the book. So when you look in the book, we have a whole section on that, and we show the linguistics associated with that. Okay, so when it comes to the law, the two divinities that govern law, first and foremost, of course, is Tehuti and Seshat, and they're the divinities of divine wisdom, and that law is codified by Ma'at, the female force of divine law, and Ma'al, the male force of divine law and balance. So they would be the Tehuti and Seshat would be more so akin to the judges, and Ma'at be akin to, the attorneys in that context. The connection between Alsar and Tehuti. So Alsar is, when you look in the text, for example, chapter 17 of the Runu Perdim Heru, they talk about how Alsar was elevated to be the head of the divinities. And you'll see that in Akhan with Awusi, in Yoruba with Obatala being the quote unquote the king and so forth. Not that he's older. You can have a king and then you can have a tribunal of elders that support the king, but he's the leader. Awusi in Akan is Obatala. In Yoruba, he's called Agu Isi in Igbo, and he has the same position. He's Alsar in ancient Kamit, the king and so forth, and then Alset is the queen mother, and they establish and lay down, the law and so forth. And then when we showed that king with the spokesperson next to him with the staff and so forth, Tehuti is the mouthpiece or the spokesperson who enunciates the proclamations of the king. In the physical body, you'll see that particular king and spokesperson very close together. Alsar governs the pituitary gland. That's a master gland in the body that regulates the functions of other glands. And then you'll see the pineal gland is not too far from the pituitary gland and so forth. So that pituitary and pineal in the body is Alsar and Tehuti in the body working together. Okay, let me go back up a little bit because I think I missed a few things. Okay, so why does Fenet connotate nosy and not breath of life? So Fenet is literally the word for nose. So instead of saying the English word your nose, in Akhan we say Fen, or in ancient Kemet is Fen or Fenet. In Akhan is Fuene, that is your nose. Now, of course, the word for life in Kemet is Ankh or Anku or Ankwa. In Akhan, the word for life is Onkwa. And yes, we'll show in fact, let's show this right quick. And this will give you some more detail about the question that you have. Okay, so in our book, Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Kara Kasa, origin and nature of the chakra, we talk about that function you're talking about. So you see the different divinities holding the Ankh, which is a talismanic structure. If you hold the Ankh, if you're a fiery divinity and your energy moves through that Ankh and it wields that fiery energy, if you have watery energy and you hold the Ankh, it projects your, watery energy and so forth. So you see the various divinities holding the Ankh. Now, but as you said, you'll see that the Ankh is utilized by the Fenet. So this is the Fenet. And then this is the Ankh. And the word for breath is Neph in ancient Kemet. So Neph in Ankh is breath of Ankh or breath of life and so forth. So you will see that this particular image is Anpu enlivening or anking the spirit of the deceased king. So it has a funerary function as well. And then you see the Yaboso and Ptah doing the same with the Ptah, so-called pharaoh, and so forth. And we show the Aakhuamuman is the same structure in Akhan and so forth. And what we were showing, that one of the ways that Ankh is spelled is the symbol of the goat with the yoke around its neck. And the word yoke comes from yoke and yoka and yonk in Proto-Indo-European, but that comes from yonk or ankh and so forth. And you'll see that the yoke is literally an ankh. It's an ankh around the neck of the individual. And the term Sahu, which means spirit, the determinative symbol, is a shrouded ancestral figure, and the animated entity with the ankh or yonk or yoke around its neck. So we're showing that the word ankh, that they corrupted into yonk or yoke and so forth, is the origin of the term yoka or yoga. And you'll see that the sistrum or seshat is in the form of an ankh as well, but there's another piece in the appendix when we're talking about Nebuchadnezzar. So we're showing two versions of the Aakhuamuman or Akua figure. You have the one that you typically see here, and then you see this one is also an Akua figure. And you see the face is turned up like this. And you see the body structure and so forth, different variations of the same thing. That is the headdress of Nebuchadnezzar. And you see these particular Akua figures are funerary figures, and then you have these which are fertility figures. So the Ankh is used as a fertility talisman, wielding the energy to stimulate fertility within the womb of the woman and so forth. But it also has funerary functions as well. And the Aakhuamuman doll has a fertility function. You see the women tie the doll on their back when it's treated by an obosomfo or okomfo, a priest or a priestess, ritually treated. And then a talisman is tied on the back, and the woman carries it on her back, and it stimulates fertility for women who couldn't have children and so forth. But there are also funerary functions for the Akua figures as well. So there's a fertility function and a funerary function. Same thing with the Ankh, has a fertility function and a funerary function. Okay, so I just want to get further, make sure I didn't miss anything else. Okay, so it says we should engage the Sankofa process to retrieve again our true names. What does that look like? What hoodoo spirits do we invoke? It seems to be more than one. So now so when Ami mentions the hoodoo tradition, so in North America, the hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition in North America. So when Akan people were forced into North America, they continue to call themselves by their names like Kofi and Kwame and Adro and so forth. And we continued to practice Akan ancestral religion. It became popularly known by the Akan word undu. Undu means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. Undu also means to become heavy with the spirit through spirit communication and spirit possession. It also has to do with divination and so forth. So undu, the Akan term undu, medicine from roots, trees, and plant life, root work, and so forth, came to be pronounced hoodoo in North America. So the hoodoo tradition is the Akan tradition. So the hoodoo spirits, meaning deities, are just the way we say the deities, like we would say in ancient Kamit or Akan tradition, the Abosom, or the Orisha. In the hoodoo tradition, we'll say the hoodoo spirit of the moon, the hoodoo spirit of the sun, the hoodoo spirit. That means the deity of the moon, the deity of the sun, the deity of earth, and so forth. Now, first and foremost, when it comes to reclaiming your name, that has to do with establishing a relationship with your Nananomsom, for your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. Now let's go to a specific one of our pages. All right. So this is our Akwamu page. And you'll see on this page all of the online courses that we have archived that are available. So most of them are either 6-week online courses or 4-week online courses. A couple of them are 7 weeks. So we were teaching them, live just like we're doing now, but then we archived them. So now they're all half price. So the 6-week online courses are $15 and the 4-week online courses are $10. So you'll see we have 38 courses that you can choose from. You can go through and see what things that you're interested in. One of them, and we also have a couple of specials, like 9 of those courses dealt with the Hoodoo tradition, as you can see here. And those 9 together are $50 for the entire 9-course set. And you'll also see that we have and it's important especially for this year, we did a 2-part series on Total Seneb, the bio-spirituality of the goddesses. So there were 6 female divinities in one course, and there's 6 more in the next course, talking about who those deities are and where their shrines are biologically in the body. So we're talking about not Bast and Tananet and Kepit and Henet. Who else? Unut, a number of different divinities, Nehemawat and Serket and Neat and Hatmehit and so forth. So we had those 2, and the Deities Seneb was part 1 and part 2, 6-week course. Deities Seneb are talking about the divine cosmology of divine twin flame marriage. So we're talking about the marriages of the deities. So Sarna Set, Ra and Ra'et, Atem, Atemet, Kepra, Keprit, the male and female divinities. Very often people hear about Kepra, for example. They don't know that Keprit is the female beetle divinity, which is Asase, Nebet, Pet, and so forth. They hear about Ra, but they've never heard of Ra'et, the creatress. They heard about Ma'at, but never heard about the male divinity Ma'a and so forth. We talk about the marriages of the divinities and how that's a model for marriage and relationships in our culture. And that's important because this particular year, New Year's Day is on Minminida, which is a Saturday. That is a form of Het Heru called Minminit in ancient Command. She's called Amiminiwa in Akhan, where she's operating through the planet Amini, which is Saturn. So because our New Year's Day begins on Minminida, or Saturday, which is governed by Minminit, which is a form of Het Heru, New Year's Day begins on the Saturday, Minminida, so the entire year will be colored by that energy. And of course, Het Heru deals with the fusion of complementary opposites, the union, the balanced union, the complementary, balanced, divinely ordered union of Afurakani man, Afurakani woman, marriage, and all these other different things. So these courses are good for give you some insight into that with the energy coming up for this year. But one of the courses, just to get into that information on the question that was being asked, our Nkom course, one of the Hoodoo courses. This was a 4-week course we did, and it's a $10 course. 4 elemental rituals of spirit communication, practical instruction. So we talk about Oshue, Nkomere, Susu, Ho, and Okragware, which is libation, ancestral shrines, meditation, and soul cleansing with spiritual head washing and so forth. So that structure right there, that exists in all Afurakani ancestral cultures. Everybody has their own name for it, but they're still doing, when they're pouring libation, when a Akhan person says Oshuye, and somebody else uses a different term in their language, we're still pouring libation. If an Akhan person says we're going to establish an Nkomre or Nsama Nkomre, an ancestral shrine, and the Yoruba person says an Ojubo, we're talking about the same thing. So establishing a relationship with your Nananomsom for your spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors, number one, and cleansing your spiritual head, your Akra, number two. Those are critical with regard to remembering or rediscovering what your actual name is. That's the direct way. Of course, your Nsamanfo, your great-great-grandparents know who you are, how you came into the world, how you incarnated into the world. All of us have an honored ancestor or ancestress that is assigned to assist us throughout the course of our lives. Just like if you had if a child had a chaperone and so forth to go to a specific event, we are sent into the world with somebody from our matriclan, our ancestral clan and so forth, who carries that matriclan energy, as well as the patriclan and so forth, to direct us as to how to utilize that energy we have inherited within this specific blood circle in a harmonious way. But they also know what our function is and can remind us of what our function is. They don't do our work for us, but they can be like the guardrails when we're going off track. They can make sure we understand when we seek that direction, how to get back on track so we can use our own power and energy and consciousness to execute our function. So, but they will give us the insight and confirmation about what our name actually is. So through that process, that Nkom process, that's the way that we do that. Now, with regard to the names of specific divinities, let me just okay, so there was a specific we did a Blog Talk radio broadcast on this a while back. So it was talking about, and let me pull this up. The deity Renin and Reninit, the male and female divinity dealing with that governs the Rein, which is the term for name. We said Renin and Reninit, the nature and function of the Rein or the name and so forth. That's a Blog Talk radio broadcast on our channel. But we also addressed that in the coursework that you see that we just showed on our Akungwaswea page. So you can listen to that. Those are the two deities that actually govern the name. But as far as who are the deities that govern the name, Renin and Reninit, the term Rein in ancient Kamit means name, Erin and Akan means name. It's the same word and so forth. And Renin is the male divinity. Reninit is the female divinity who actually govern and hold that name energy together for you. But when you invoke the divinity that governs your head as well as your Nsamanfo, that's where the knowledge of what your name and function comes from. Okay. Now, question about me pull this up real quick. In fact, we did a couple of articles on this. So the question was, speaking on Nana Tigare and Sujibi as Abosom and so forth. So we did a 2-part article series showing that Asujibi, Akonedi, Adadi Kofi, and Tigare are not Abosom. So we go into detail about that. That's on the website. Even if you type in Asujibi and Odwirafo, you'll find both of those articles pop up right at the top. But we show that these are not deities. They're ancestral spirits, Asujibi and Akonedi and Adadi Kofi, Tigare. They're ancestral spirits of Guan people, Guan-speaking people that were later promoted as Abosom, falsely as Abosom. They are not Abosom, never were. They're just deceased relatives of Guan-speaking people. And certain Akhan people, a small percentage of certain Akhan people in a certain region, were interacting with Guan-speaking people, and some married into their culture and so forth. And some of them started utilizing or, including themselves in that particular practice. But because certain Black people from North America happened to travel to that region, they were given the idea that these are the major Abosom, in Ghana. And they were unaware of that. And then later on, they would later find out, but they were under the false belief that these are actually deities, which they are not. Okay. Okay, the purpose of talking about Tehuti and his title, font, one of the reasons we showed that is because his title is Fa in Odun and Ifa in Yoruba and Afa in Igbo and so forth. And they don't know the origin of the name. They don't realize that Fa, which is font with a nasal N and so forth, font, is a title of Tehuti and ancient Kamit. They know that Fa or Ifa is the title of Orumila in Yoruba, but they don't know why Fa means that. They know that Fa means to scrape or scratch in the Yoruba language. A Yoruba person will say, well, Orumila, the deity of divine wisdom, the Orisha of divine wisdom, we also call him Ifa. And the word Fa means to scrape or scratch, and it has to do with divination, but they can't tell you why. So we were able to show them that Tehuti, the divinity of divine wisdom, his title is Font, also Fent, but Font with a nasal N. And that means he of the great Font or beak, quote unquote, nose. It also means to scrape or to scratch, and that's what he uses his beak for. So we show where the entire cosmology of Font, scrape, scratch, nose, wisdom, divination, digging under the surface, and all of that comes from. Okay. I know the T for the feminine that goes back to the old empire. In the language Enkamet, the T for the feminine goes back to if you look in the pyramid text and so forth, you'll find it. For example, you'll find the male deity Ma'ah in the pyramid text, and you'll also find the female divinity Ma'at in the pyramid text. You'll find, that feminizing T. There's a specific reason why the T is the feminizing force, and it's an energetic force that feminizes. All right, so one last thing we want to show real quick. Okay, so on October 7th, we will be doing a virtual screening of our new film. This is our second documentary film, our film Hoodoo, Akhan, Ancestral Religion in North America. We're going to do a virtual screening on October 7th. We're going to release the film later in October, and we'll go to different cities and do, in-person screenings. But the virtual screening for our subscribers and our followers, we're doing that virtual screening first for those who are on our list, whether you follow us on Instagram or Facebook or, YouTube, on our email list and so forth. For those who follow us, we're having a virtual screening first. And then everybody else, when we go to the different cities, we go from city to city and so forth, we'll have a list of different cities, and then, people can come out and see the film and so forth. But for the people who've been following us and so forth, we're going to have a virtual screening first, October 7th. So if you look on our page, this is the page right here. That's the Conche Films page that you see on the screen right now. Let me just give you the direct link. Okay, so in the chat room. So we're going to do Hoodooman, the Hoodooman Festival. So we're going to have our 9th annual Hoodooman, Hoodoo Nation Festival. We always have that in the 3 weeks after our New Year observance. So this year will be on the weekend of October 15th, that October 15th weekend. In a few days, we're going to put some more details about that, but it's going to be an in-person event. It's not going to be a virtual one this time. So we're going to put some information out about that. But yeah, so we'll be probably more than like we'll put the information out on Minute on Saturday. We'll put the detailed information out about the Hoodooman Festival on Saturday this weekend, and you'll see all of that. But so you'll see when you see the YouTube here, that is the first trailer for the film. But we're completing everything right now, so we're just finishing up a few little touches and so forth. But October 7th. So in the chat room, we just put the link to Eventbrite. So if you would like to support the work that we are doing, if you want to go now to Eventbrite, the virtual screening for our film, just for our subscribers and followers, is $11.11. It's $11.11. You can go now and get your tickets for that, and that will be, once it comes, we'll give you the direct private link. It'll be up for that time frame, and then once our subscribers have seen the film, then we're going to remove the link, of course, and then we'll be going from city to city to, like we did before. We had the previous film a few years back, Amaruka African American Ancestral Divination, and we went to different cities for that. We actually were accepted at a couple of film festivals for that documentary, one in California, one in New York, and we won an award for it in New York. So this is the second documentary specifically on the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akan Ancestral Religion in North America. But we also showed the connection between ancient Kamit and Kamit through West Afuraitkaitnit Africa into North America, an unbroken tradition, culturally, linguistically, cosmologically, ritually, and so forth. So, but yes, if you would like to get some tickets, we have some tickets still available. So just go right now. $11.11. If you support the work that we've been doing, this is going to help us. One of the reasons we're doing the screening, because this will help us with regard to our travel. So we would travel to different places, and what we do is we will rent out a venue, rent out a theater, or rent out a Black-owned business and so forth. Travel to the space, rent out the venue, share the film, and then go to the next city. So we have to rent out a number of different venues as we're doing this. So this screening will assist us in engaging in that process. And you get a chance, of course, to see the film before everybody else does. Okay. Okay, so we went over a little bit longer than I expected. I was expecting to be done by like 9:30 maybe. But we just want to get this information out. You can download the book for free, the Sankofa book for free. You can download all 31 of our books for free on our publications page. You have access to the 38 online courses. Most of them are either $10 or $15, 6 weeks or 4 weeks and so forth. And of course, the film. Once again, please support that. We appreciate that support. This will be, saved, of course, if you need to come back to it. If you have any questions, of course, let us know. If you're not on our email list, just you can hit us up on Instagram or Facebook or in the comment section here. If you're not on the email list, if you don't receive emails, you can post your email or DM us on Instagram, Odwirafo on Instagram, Kwesi Akhan on Facebook, or Odwirafo Akhan on Facebook, and we can put you on the list so you can be updated on everything that's happening. If you would like to join us in Kamit, we have 2 of those discounted spaces. The trip is $3,000 for, round trip airfare, hotels, accommodations, the cruise, and everything else. You'll see all of that. We have 2 of the discounted spaces available, $1,500. But we also have our payment plans for, through PayPal or just the regular, your own payment plan. You'll see that all of that is on the website. So once again, Yedase, we thank everybody for joining in with us. And Yebeshabio, we will meet again.